Incredible truth revealed. Maid hears billionaire's son's cry after 3 days of being buried alive. Maria often found solace in the repetitive motion of her daily cleaning, but today was different. A muffled cry pierced the silence of the grand mansion, sending chills down her spine. She froze, the feather duster slipping from her grasp, its soft impact muffled by the marble floors. 3 days of silence, and now a voice, a desperate call for help that shattered her mundane world. The voice was undeniable. It belonged to Alex, the estranged son of the billionaire family she served. Panic flooded Maria's senses, a cold dread gnawing at the edges of her courage. The secrets buried in this estate had deep roots. She hesitated, torn between her survival instinct and a deep-seated sense of justice. Alex had always been a ghost in this opulent home, a name whispered in shameful tones. How could she act? The consciousness of her position, the discrimination she faced daily, and her family's sacrifices clouded her mind. Her parents had worked endlessly to give her a chance she was risking by even considering stepping outside her assigned role. Her heart raced, each thud aligning with the echo of Alex's cries, urging her into a moral dilemma. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The mansion felt suffocating as she imagined the darkness that surrounded Alex. Maria's fingers trembled as she gripped the cleaning cloth, pulling it taut in her hands. The sacrifices of her parents burned a bright light in her mind, illuminating the path ahead but also intensifying the darkness she felt trapped in. Each day of toil in these marble-clad halls reminded her of her family's dignity, a dignity imperiled by the potential fallout of her actions. She recalled the stories her mother told her of their homeland, of the struggles and the resolve to find a better life. Would they be proud of her if she remained silent, or would her inaction haunt her, a ghost tethered to her conscience forever? The anxiety coiled like a tightening noose, threatening to choke her as the clock ticked away the seconds, each one echoing louder than the last. Drawing a deep breath, Maria felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. Yet how far could she go? The billionaire father would do anything to hide this revelation, she knew that. The fear of losing her job, her meager support for her family, weighed heavily upon her chest.
But the urgency of Alex's cries sparked a fire in her heart. Through the walls of the mansion, Linda thought of Alex, the little boy she once saw playing amidst the grandeur, now burdened by a legacy carved from betrayal and power struggles. As she took her first step towards the hidden escape tunnels, the realization hit her. She was bound not just by her station, but by the unyielding ties of empathy and shared desperation. Would she stand idly by as another life was swallowed by silence? As she prepared for the impossible, the stakes climbed higher. Maria's heart hammered, a plunge into clarity, but the weight of the choice pressed down harder than the marble beneath her feet. The echoes of her invocations rose around her, creating a haunting symphony of questions and doubts. In that moment, she heard Alex's voice again, tense, fearful, calling her name into the void. In that instant, the path forward seemed clear, and yet Maria found herself crumbling under the weight of fear. Would she risk everything for a fleeting chance of justice? The door to her own limitations stood ajar, tugging her along a precipice where decisions would reshape their fates forever. With every hesitant step Maria took towards the hidden escape tunnels, her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. The cries of Alex echoed in her ears, propelling her forward, while the specter of potential consequences loomed large. She had always been the invisible force in this mansion, an overlooked cog in a grand machine. Now, caught in a pulse of emotional urgency, she understood that she possessed power, a choice that could alter destinies. Around her, the mansion's interior felt more like a gilded prison than the grand residence it was meant to be. Shadows danced on the walls, mocking her indecision. She stopped momentarily, her breath coming in short bursts, grappling with the weight of her next move. This wasn't about simply being a maid confined to her station. It was about stepping into a role of courage, of agency, and perhaps even heroism. The images of her parents flashed before her, their sacrifices a reminder of what was at stake. Maria could almost hear her mother's voice ringing through the fog of uncertainty. "You have the strength to stand up, Maria. Don't let fear silence you." Her mother's words were an echo of empowerment, ricocheting against the walls of doubt. Fighting for justice was a form of strength, a strength she was beginning to recognize within herself. As she approached the dark corridor leading to the escape, Maria envisioned Alex trapped in a grave of silence, the bitter reality of his existence, starkly contrasting with the lush surroundings of the estate. The labyrinth of halls and rooms that surrounded her felt like a maze of oppression. But within that maze, she saw a glimmer of purpose, a reason to confront the very notion of power that had plagued them both. With renewed determination, she plunged into the narrow passage, her heart racing as the walls closed in. Every breath felt like a rebellion, every step a testament to her resolve. The air was stale and filled with a fear that clung to her skin, but it was outweighed by the urgency to emerge on the other side as something new, an advocate, a savior, a voice that could not be muffled any longer. As she navigated the dark passages, her thoughts shifted to the potential outcomes of her actions. What if she was caught? The repercussions would be grim, not only for her but for Alex as well. The thought sent a chill down her spine. Yet could she afford to live with the knowledge that she let a life slip away? The alternative was unfathomable. In that moment, silence felt like complicity. Suddenly, a loud thud jolted her. She placed a hand against the wall for support, her heart pounding against her ribcage. Her uncertainty returned, flooding her mind with a chaotic storm of fears. But then she remembered the sound of Alex's voice, desperate and pleading, and the fire within her reignited. Maria pressed forward, her heartbeat sinking with the urgency of the situation. The tunnels twisted and turned, reflective of her own internal struggle. As she approached a metal hatch, the realization struck her. This was it. She was on the precipice of transformation, teetering between the familiar world of servitude and an unknown path. With her hand on the cold metal door, she paused, feeling the weight of her choice press against her palm. This moment could reshape the narrative that bound them both. Could she truly unleash the truth? Would it be enough? Taking a deep breath, Maria lifted the hatch with a creak that reverberated through the silence. Hope and fear danced in equal measure as she readied herself for what lay beyond. But just as the door swung open, a figure emerged from the shadows, eyes narrowed with intent. Her heart quickened once again, the confrontation imminent. Would she step forward into this new reality, or turn away, retreating back into the shadows? The figure stepped forward, a silhouette against the dim light, perfectly capturing Maria's conflict. It was a man she recognized, one of the estate's security guards, known for his vigilant eyes and an unsettling air. In that moment, the choice crystallized further. Here she was, teetering between her fearful past and a future laden with potential. But first, she had to confront this immediate challenge. "You shouldn't be down here," he warned, the authority in his voice making Maria's stomach twist. The oppressive silence thickened around them as she gauged the distance between them. Could she squeeze past him? The thought flitted through her mind like a moth drawn to flame. But she dismissed it. This was no time for half measures. "Let me pass," she said, surprising even herself with the firmness in her tone. It felt liberating and yet terrifying to assert herself so boldly. Would the power of her will be enough to make him back down? "Do you have any idea what you're risking?" he countered, his eyes betraying a flicker of hesitation. It was a crack in his armor, an opening she hadn't expected. "I know exactly what I'm risking," she replied, surprising herself with the conviction that spilled from her lips. The words felt foreign yet right, echoing the strength her parents had always urged her to embrace. "I'm not here to play it safe anymore." There was a beat of silence as the guard assessed her. Maria's heart raced, each thump accentuating her resolve. She could no longer remain a mere maid. She had the power to change the course of events, not only for herself, but for Alex. The awareness of her determination grew within her, filling the hollow spaces of doubt with a burgeoning strength. "Do you think they will let you get away with this?" he challenged, but Maria saw through his demeanor. It was a fear echoing her own. The guard was just a cog as well, trapped by the expectations placed upon him in this mansion of gilded cages. "Maybe they won't," she said, vulnerability slipping through, but it was accompanied by an undeniable force. "But I can't stand by while someone's life hangs in the balance. Not anymore." For an inexplicable moment, the guard's expression softened, as if he saw beyond her position. Maria seized the moment, an opportunity to leverage empathy. "This isn't just about me. There's a life we can save.
What will you do with this information? Will you remain part of the silence? The tension hung heavy like a storm cloud, and she realized this confrontation was as much about her awakening as his. She had to believe in her voice, in the path she was carving out of fear. The world held more possibilities than she had ever imagined, and suddenly those paths unfurled before her. As the guard hesitated, Maria felt something shift deep within herself. Fear transformed into purpose, driving the clarity of her conviction. It compelled her, challenging her to break free from the shadows once and for all. "What if I help you?" the guard finally proposed, his tone less threatening, yet still laden with uncertainty. His question hung in the air, teetering between collaboration and risk. "Will you?" she asked, the intensity of their connection sparking a flicker of hope. "Will you stand with me against this?" In that instant, the first fragile threads of an alliance began to form, a shared decision born from breaking the silence. Before either could speak again, the piercing sound of footsteps echoed down the passageway, startling both. "We need to move," she urged, adrenaline cutting through her words, now more than ever. As they quickly planned a course of action, an unsettling realization dawned within her. The deeper truths of their shared world were about to unravel. It wasn't just about Alex's safety anymore. It was about standing against oppression and claiming agency in a life too long stifled by shadows. What awaited them outside the tunnels involved risks Maria could hardly fathom, but she now sensed the preciousness of her new momentum. The moment had become alive, saturated with implications, edging unmistakably toward confrontation. As they stepped together into the widening corridor, an undeniable truth emerged. They were about to challenge a system built on secrets, and the stakes had never been higher. With the shadow of possible consequences looming, Maria felt both fear and anticipation rise within her with equal measures. Who else would join them in this inevitable collision of courage and danger? What truths would emerge from the confrontation ahead? They darted through the dimly lit corridor, each step an echo of their resolve. Maria felt the ground shifting under her feet. The stark contrast between her old life and this newfound alliance was like a baptism by fire. It wasn't just the promise of agency that was igniting her spirit. It was the shared purpose with the guard, whose name she didn't know, yet they were bound by a common goal. "Where do we go?" he asked, urgency lacing his tone as they reached a crossroads. The once familiar paths of the estate now seemed labyrinthine and fraught with peril. "Down the service stairs. There's an old maintenance exit I know of," Maria replied, adrenaline lending clarity to her direction. Each word she spoke felt like a small acquisition of power, chipping away at the chains of obligation she had worn for too long. As they navigated through the winding passageways, Maria's mind raced. If they succeeded, they would lead Alex to safety. But at what cost? The gnawing question of whether she would pay dearly for daring to defy authority crept into her thoughts, a ghost she couldn't shake, no matter how hard she pressed forward. "Do you have a plan?" the guard asked, a flicker of hope mingled with skepticism in his voice. I'm still working on it," Maria admitted, and for a fleeting moment, doubt clouded her vision. She could feel the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Had she ventured too far into a territory that could lead to ruin? But as her heart pulsed with fear, something else bubbled up, an ember of confidence rooted deep within her, stoked by their alliance. "What if we use the security cameras? We could find out where they're holding him." In her mind, the idea coalesced into something tangible. If she could analyze the visual feeds, perhaps she could pinpoint Alex and the location of the key players involved in his peril. The guard nodded, visibly impressed. "Let's make it to the security room," he said, a reinvigorated sense of urgency humming through him. As they approached a heavy door, Maria felt a blend of anticipation and dread. What awaited them on the other side could change everything.
Resolute, she pushed the door open, the creaking hinges sounding like a sinister whisper. The room inside was dimly lit, screens flickering with security feeds that chronicled the estate and its inhabitants. "Over there," Maria pointed instinctively to a feed that showed an empty hallway leading to a set of barred doors. "That must be the cellar. If we can get in touch with whoever is down there." Her voice trailed off as her mind raced ahead, constructing a myriad of possibilities. The guard stood watch near the door while Maria scrolled through the feeds, her heart hammering in her chest. What if they found only despair waiting at the end of their efforts? But as she skimmed through the recordings, one frame captured her attention, a figure in a dark coat, whispering urgently to someone beyond her view. She leaned in closer, battling against the growing fear cascading through her. "I think I see him! Just look!" she called over her shoulder. The guard glanced at the screen, eyes widening. "That's him! He's alive!" A surge of relief cascaded within her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the need for action. They had to move fast before the opportunity slipped away. "We need to find a way to get him out," she declared, and as she spoke, something inside her solidified. She grimaced at the mounting weight of what was to come. Would they be able to turn this slim thread of hope into reality? Who else would stand against the tide? And would their efforts lead to a confrontation, not just with the shadows lurking in the estate, but with their very selves? The truth simmered just beneath the surface, poised to pour forth in a flood of revelations. Her thoughts spiraled into a singular conclusion. They would not just battle for Alex's freedom, but for their own lives. As they plotted their next move, the sound of footsteps echoed ever closer. The threat loomed larger, intensifying the gravity of their quest. Would they tame the darkness together, or would fear claim dominion once more? With determination hardening in her chest, Maria stood poised for what might become the most defining moment of her life. The door to confrontation was ajar, and beyond it lay the revelation and retribution she had always feared, yet craved. Would they cross that threshold together, and what would unfurl? Maria's heart raced as she continued to watch the screen, the tension crackling in the air between them. Each beep and frantic flicker from the monitors echoed in her ears, drowning out the sound of the approaching footsteps. The uncertainty of their circumstances sharpened her focus. This was no longer just about Alex's release, but a manifestation of everything she had suppressed for too long. "Do you think anyone down there knows we're watching?" the guard whispered, breaking a short silence filled with apprehension. "I don't think so. The cameras may give us insight, but we need to move now."
Maria's decisive tone shocked even her, a realization blossoming that she was not the timid maid accustomed to retreating into shadows. She could shape the narrative. She had agency. As they mapped out their next steps, Maria's mind turned to the skills she had honed in her years of servitude. The meticulous attention to detail, the quiet observation of the household dynamics, and the clandestine whispers passed between the powerful elite were now coming together as a formidable arsenal. Despite the anguish of her circumstances, she felt a shift within, a burgeoning confidence fueled by the urgency of their mission. "Listen," she said, suddenly contemplative. "We can use the maintenance exit as a distraction. If we trigger a minor alert, everyone will check the opposite side of the estate. It'll give us the window we need." The words flowed freely, each one reinforcing her emerging conviction. The guard's eyes gleamed with admiration. "That's risky, but it might just work. Do you know how to activate the alarm system from here?" Maria nodded, recalling the numerous times she had overheard conversations about the security systems interwoven with maintenance reports. "Let me figure it out." The thought of employing her knowledge, often seen as insignificant, now seemed pivotal. With shaking fingers, she navigated the interface, deftly tracing commands across the screen. The images flickered, displaying myriad locations across the estate, until finally she reached the control panel for the alarm. "Here goes nothing," she murmured, internally questioning her ability. Would she misstep in this critical moment? She took a deep breath, steadying her trembling resolve, and executed the command. A Pearson siren wouldn't just signal a diversion. It was a rebuke to the complacency she'd lived with for too long. The guard scanned the area, his breath shallow and hurried. "We don't have much time. They'll respond quickly." "Let's stay sharp. We need each other now more than ever," Maria replied, tension harmonizing with newfound clarity. As the alarm wailed, Maria felt the unsettling mixture of fear and exhilaration surge within her. It was her moment to confront everything that had held her back. What if she failed? But the stakes were too high. She couldn't allow doubt to surface now. The risk of choosing inaction was greater than summoning courage. "Go. I'll create a barrier with the security feeds, so it looks like the disturbance is happening in another wing," she instructed, adrenaline narrowing her focus. She could feel the heartbeat of opportunity pulsing at her fingertips. As the guard bolted towards the service stairs, Maria felt an unshakable realization. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It echoed her quest for self-liberation. It was a confrontation with every limiting belief that had kept her confined. With calculated urgency, she made the last adjustments to the screens, delaying potential discovery. The intensity grew sharper.
They were crossing a line, and there was no returning to the safety of ignorance. As she prepared to follow, dread coursed through her. What would confront her on the other side? Clarity hit her like a tidal wave. The only way to break free from chains, both seen and unseen, was to confront the looming threat head-on. With her heart pounding, she stepped through the doorway, ready to face whatever darkness awaited. Secrets and truths lingered in the shadows, and Maria steeled herself for what lay beyond. Would this be a path to salvation or demise? In that moment, all that she had known hung in the balance. Would she find liberation, or would she be swallowed by the very forces she sought to oppose? The answer awaited her, veiled in the uncertainties of what was to come. The corridor was dimly lit, shadows clinging to every corner as Maria stepped into the unknown. Each echoing footfall heightened her awareness. The uncertainty of what lay ahead pressed against her chest, but surrender was not an option. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, blending fear with fierce determination. She felt invincible yet distinctly fragile, a paradox brewing deep inside. Navigation was a challenge in the unfamiliar territory. Her hands grazed the cool walls as she reminded herself of the urgency. Every second counted. The noise of the alarm reverberated behind her, a grim echo of her rebellion against a life of silence. With each passing heartbeat, she pushed through lingering self-doubt. The timid maid was evolving into someone capable of crafting her fate. Following the guard's directions, she ducked past errant doors, stealing glimpses of opulent rooms filled with expensive trappings that told tales of privilege. Yet, as Maria passed these enclaves of wealth, they felt more like prisons than showcases. The weight of their secrets bore down on her, a reminder that these walls were built with manipulation and control. A sudden shriek pierced her thoughts. A window flung open, and shouting erupted from another part of the mansion. The guard was doing his job, drawing attention away from her. She mustered a grateful smile despite the circumstances and pressed onward, rhythmic focus leading her deeper into the bowels of the estate. A flickering light revealed a narrow staircase, descending into a basement that pulsed with damp air. I remembered the layout from overheard conversations about maintenance, a place often neglected, yet alive with forgotten echoes. This was where Alex might be. Her heart raced with each step, hope intertwining with the shadows that surrounded her. As she reached the last step, the faintest whisper of muffled cries drew her attention. It was undoubtedly Alex, his voice a haunting melody that leapt into her chest. Maria steeled herself against the fear clawing at her mind, urging her to retreat, but that was not the person she had determined to become.
Drawing closer, she spotted a set of rusted locks and a heavy door, hiding whatever darkness had invaded her life. There was a palpable energy surrounding this entryway, the threshold between her old self and the person she was cultivating. She placed her palm on the cold surface, feeling each reverberation of the cries behind the door. In that moment, a whirlpool of decisions collided within her. Did she possess the fortitude to face the individuals who had orchestrated this nightmare? Would she have the courage to embrace conflict, to confront the very people who had kept her and Alex in chains? It wasn't merely a fight for someone else's freedom. It was about reclaiming her voice, her autonomy. With a deep breath, she examined the locks, piecing together what she knew from the whispers and scraps of knowledge she had carefully pieced throughout her years. This was her chance to not only liberate Alex, but also to sever the reins of fear that had governed her for so long. As she began to work on the locks, every click and scrape filled her heart with a mixture of exhilaration and apprehension. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a dark room that was both ominous and familiar. Shadows danced on the wall, and there, huddled in the corner, she saw Alex, a figure cloaked in despair. Yet Maria's burgeoning resolve surged once more, thrumming like electricity in her veins. "Alex," she breathed, the name escaping her lips like a promise. His eyes widened, a flicker of recognition sparking hope through the shroud of defeat. But just before she could step forward, a sudden noise echoed through the corridor, a sound of footsteps approaching rapidly. Panic clawed at her throat. They weren't through the storm just yet. With Alex's future hanging in the balance, Maria realized she was on the precipice of a new battle, armed not just with accumulated knowledge, but an instilled courage that mocked fear. The stakes had escalated, and the true confrontation waited just around the corner. What would she do when the next wave of adversaries arrived? How far was she willing to go to reclaim her life and rescue Alex? The next chapter of her journey was unfolding, and the moment of truth loomed, casting shadows on the path ahead. Maria's heart dropped into her stomach as the footsteps drew closer, each sound reminding her of the danger surrounding her. The thrill of hope that had surged within her moments before, now tangled with rising panic. She was no longer just a maid, she was a rescuer, a protector. Yet that knowledge brought its own weight, thrusting her into the reality of her situation.
"Stay quiet, Alex," she whispered, her voice barely a tremor, as she crouched low, her body instinctively merging with the shadows of the room. The weight of the moment settled heavily on her, pressing down in a tight embrace of responsibility. She had come this far, but the stakes had never felt higher. The footsteps halted just outside the door.
Maria strained her ears, attempting to decipher the muffled conversations that passed through the wood. It was a blend of urgency and confusion, a chaotic mix of power plays that ruled this place. She wished she could perceive their intentions. Were they searching for her? For Alex? Or were they simply functioning as puppets in a larger game she had yet to comprehend? As the doorknob rattled, her instincts screamed at her to act. She couldn't let them in. What if they discovered Alex? What if they dragged them both back into a deeper darkness? The confrontation still loomed, but now it was even more complex. She had to plan. Her mind raced. Did she have anything to defend herself with? Searching the shadows, she spotted a long metal pipe on the floor, perhaps discarded from some maintenance work. It was imperfect and crude, yet it would do. She grasped it, feeling its cold weight in her hands. It was a physical reminder of her latent strength, a weapon against the old narrative of her incapability. The doorknob twisted, and the door creaked, allowing a sliver of light to sneak into the room. She prepared herself for the worst. The figure that stepped through was tall, partially obscured by the darkness. Instinctively she straightened, ready to confront whoever this was. "Search everywhere," the figure barked to someone outside, a voice brimming with authority and impatience that sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over her. This was no ordinary guard. It was one of the higher-ups, someone who likely knew all the dark secrets housed within these walls. Maria's mind whirred, picking apart the man's posture, his movements. He was confident, accustomed to command. She had no intention of letting him impose his will on her or Alex. As he stepped further into the room, her resolve solidified into pure determination. "Alex, don't move," she instructed softly, a silent mantra etched in her mind. She could ignite a fire under this oppressive darkness, but she needed a diversion. Suddenly, she spotted Alex's gaze fixed on her, filled with confusion, yet spurring her forward. The juxtaposition of his state contrasted starkly against her newfound purpose. In an instant, she made a decision. She would create a distraction. "I'll count to 3, and then I'll make my move," she thought, silently confident in her resolve. She didn't merely want to free him, she wanted to reclaim herself. It was time to break the chains. 1, she began to prepare. Feel the room's energy shift. 2. A loud crash erupted in the hallway, startling the man and drawing his attention away just long enough for Maria to launch herself forward. The pipe swung high, fueled by her rage and desperation, her body moving with newfound agility. The confrontation began, a clash of wills fueled by everything she had ever suppressed. A moment of clarity advised her. She was no longer just a maid, she embodied defiance.
As the fight ensued, each action carried the weight of her truth, her awakening. She had a choice to make, and it wasn't just about escaping anymore. What would she let go of, and what would she fight for? The answer could redefine everything, not only for herself, but for Alex too, as the echoes of their voices ignited beneath the layers of darkness. In that moment, Maria realized she was prepared not just to confront her past, but to alter the very trajectory of her future. Would she find the power within to see this through? The stakes had heightened further, but so had her courage. The next steps of this battle had only just begun. Maria's muscles tensed as the blow connected, sending the man staggering back. The cold metal pipe felt strangely reassuring in her grip, a manifestation of her resolve. She had pushed past fear, diving headfirst into confrontation, and now every move felt like a step toward freedom. The man regained his balance, eyes narrowing as he targeted her with a piercing gaze, assessing the threat she posed. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to cower in the shadows. But she wasn't merely surviving anymore. She was fighting back. "Who the hell do you think you are?" he roared, stepping closer, radiating an aura of menace that seeped into the air. The authority in his voice hardened like iron, but Maria stood firm, her heart roaring back in defiance. "I am no longer anyone's shadow," she replied, her voice surprisingly steady, creating a space of power she hadn't known she'd possess.
She swung the pipe again, aiming for his midsection, the strike landing as a solid thud. He grunted, doubling over, but she found herself surprised by how satisfying it felt to strike back. With every exchange, she discovered more about herself, each movement igniting flickers of latent strength she never realized resided within. This was more than physical combat, it was an awakening. Her past had been filled with silence, yet here in this moment her voice was loud, ringing through the darkness around them. As he stumbled, grasping his wound, she turned and shot a glance at Alex, rooting him to a spot. "Keep quiet, stay behind me." The gentle command carried a weight of protection, revealing the layers of care and responsibility she had toward him. She could protect him, she could shape the narrative of their lives. The man lashed out, swinging his arm wildly, desperation mingling with fury. Maria ducked, narrowly avoiding the strike, and used the moment to gain ground. Strategy swirled in her mind. She needed to end this quickly, before anyone beyond these walls realized the turmoil inside this room. A fire lit deep within her, fueled by the injustice she had witnessed for so long. The duality of fear and righteous anger transformed her. She had previously been labeled as helpless, but no more. Each methodical decision she made now crystallized her identity. She was not simply a maid, she was a warrior of her own destiny.
With one last forceful swing of the pipe, she connected with the man's knee, sending him crashing to the floor. He was down but not out, a testament to the darkness reigning around them. Yet in this brief moment, Maria tasted victory, however fleeting. She turned back to Alex, his eyes wide with a blend of awe and fear. "We need to get out of here," she urged, the urgency of their situation propelling her forward. Each thought flourished in the back of her mind, an understanding emerging that their escape was not just about freedom, but a reclaiming of agency. "Can you stand?" she asked, scanning his face for courage. He nodded, albeit hesitantly. Maria extended her hand, ready to guide him through the chaotic unknown. But as they neared the exit, the door swung open again, and an ominous figure stepped through. Maria's fight instincts ignited once more, and every muscle in her body screamed to prepare for another confrontation. The realization hit her hard. This was not merely about facing oppression. It was about dismantling it, layer by layer. "Move," she hissed at Alex, her heart racing as she prepared for what lay ahead. The air thickened with anticipation, and every thought converged on an unshakable truth. This was no longer just a battle for survival. It was a battle for their lives, to claim the futures they envisioned. What would she confront next? The very foundations of their imprisonment would soon tremble, and Maria felt her readiness surge as she sought not just an exit, but liberation. The next moment would define whether they could escape this cycle, leaving behind the chains of their old identities. Would she find the strength to face the figure before them, or would this be the breaking point? The figure in the doorway was silhouetted against the dim light of the hallway, imposing and menacing. Maria's heart hammered in her chest. Her instincts screamed for a fight, but her mind battled for clarity. She needed to think, to devise a strategy in the face of imminent danger. "Back away," she ordered, her voice steadier than she felt. This wasn't just a challenge to the unknown, it was a summons for her own rising authority. The figure stepped into the room, revealing a familiar yet chilling face. Mark, the son of the billionaire she had been forced to serve. Long shadows danced around him, amplifying his malevolence. "Look who's trying to play hero," he mocked, a smirk twisting on his lips. "You really think you can just walk out of here?" The mocking tone ignited a spark of defiance within her. How many times had she been dismissed, belittled, forced into silence? "Not again. I've had enough of being a pawn in your game," she shot back, gripping the pipe tighter, grounding herself against the tide of fear washing over her. Behind her, Alex was frozen in place, eyes darting between her and Mark. She needed to protect him, and every moment mattered.
If only she could shield him and find a way out. Her mind clicked into high gear, plotting an escape route around the looming threat. Mark chuckled, his gaze turning predatory. "You think that pipe makes you strong? You're out of your league, Maria." He advanced, the arrogance oozing from him. With each step he took, Maria felt the weight of past indignities, unresolved anger swelling within her. "To hell with your league," she whispered fiercely to herself, her resolve crystallizing. She wasn't just defending herself anymore. She was forging her own identity, reclaiming her narrative. Summoning a breath of courage, she focused on him, her body coiling with energy for the impending confrontation. "Don't underestimate me," she warned, preemptively strategizing her next move. This was about more than defending herself. This was about carving her place in the world. "Underestimating is what got you here," Mark taunted, lunging toward her in a swift motion. Maria ducked to the side, thwarting his attack and keeping her footing. The adrenaline sparked. She felt alive amidst the threat, the choice to fight filling her with adrenaline. With newfound purpose, Maria countered, swinging the pipe toward his torso. He stepped aside, but she pressed forward. The strike landed against his thigh. He staggered, growing visibly frustrated. For every insult he'd hurled in their twisted relationship, she carved out a piece of justice, a reclaiming of her autonomy. "Alex, find a way out," she called without taking her eyes off Mark. The urgency shattered the tension in the air, giving space for Alex to act. He didn't hesitate this time. He shoved through a side door, following her command. "Running away, are we?" Mark hissed, turning his furious gaze back to Maria. "That's your answer." "No, it's my choice," she shot back, steady and empowered. With every measured action, she realized this fight wasn't just about physical prowess. It was a statement of her transformation. She had spent far too long as a bystander in her own life, and now the weight of her voice resonated louder than ever before. The realization struck her, illuminating a path. Her personal liberation hinged not only on escape, but on understanding her power, her capacity to navigate the chaos and emerge victorious. As Mark lunged again, Maria prepared herself, mind racing with the unyielding truth that she was on the verge of breaking free. The fight wasn't merely against him, but against all the shackles of helplessness she had felt before. "Let's see just how much you underestimate me," she declared, adrenaline coursing through her, ready to dismantle the very foundations of shame that had constrained her for so long. In this moment she could forge a new identity. But as she readied herself for the inevitable clash, a chilling sensation crept over her. What would it mean to confront the truth of her past and the darkness of who Mark had become?
Was she ready for the revelations that lay within this confrontation? The confrontation surged forward like a storm unleashed. Maria focused all her energy into the moment as Mark lunged. With a steady resolve, she sidestepped his advance, channeling the years of pent-up frustration and indignation into a striking blow. The metal pipe connected with a satisfying thud, and she felt an empowering surge of strength. This was no longer just a skirmish, it was a definitive assertion of her identity. Mark stumbled back, rage flaring in his eyes. "You'll regret this," he spat, the venom in his voice underscoring his desperation. But Maria wasn't listening. She was too busy reflecting on the metamorphosis occurring inside her. Every act of defiance against Mark was a bold step away from the passivity that had defined her existence. As he regained his footing, Maria's heartbeat synchronized with her thoughts. This wasn't merely about physical dominance, it was a reclamation of her narrative, her voice, her dignity. With this realization, she could feel the walls she had erected against her fears beginning to crumble. She was the architect of her own liberation, and this fight spoke to the potential she had been blind to for so long. "Run, Alex!" she shouted over her shoulder, a raw urgency propelling her words into the space between them. She knew Alex was watching the unfolding drama, weighed down by fear and confusion. "You have to find your way to safety." Determined, she pivoted to face Mark once more. He was charging again, but she had transformed her fear into focus, layering her defenses with newfound confidence. She would not let him intimidate her any longer. "Why do you care?" he bellowed. "You're just a maid." "Not anymore," Maria retorted, the words burning bright. "I am a woman who chooses her own path." With those words, she swung again, landing another blow solidly. A rush of adrenaline flooded through her, and she felt the collective energy of all the moments in her life that had led to this defining juncture. Clarity washed over her. She was no longer an invisible figure in the mansion, but a pivotal force, ready to reshape her existence. As Maria circled to dodge Mark's charge, her instincts kicked in. She was learning to read him, recognizing patterns in his anger-fueled assault. The fight grew more fluid each moment. It wasn't just escape she craved, it was the liberation of the self, the essence of who she had always been under the weight of subservience. Amidst their exchange, she sensed Alex stirring in the background, an anxious presence even as he wrestled with his own fears. This wasn't merely an escape, it was a defining moment that would forever change the direction of both their lives. Maria thrust forward with renewed intensity, catching Mark off guard. "You don't own my choices," she declared with fierce defiance.
Just as she grasped the opportunity for one last decisive move, The sound of additional footsteps emerged, guards responding to the alarm. Time was running out. Mark sneered and hurled insults, but each word only fueled Maria's determination. "You think you can quell me with words? I am more than your reflection," she shouted. The vehemence in her voice echoed like a clarion call, and with one powerful swing, she knocked the pipe out of his grasp. Mark stumbled back, now filled with uncertainty and fear as he blinked in disbelief. Maria pressed her advantage. "This isn't just about you and me. It's about breaking free from all the chains you represent." In those words lay her accomplished resolution. She faced her fears, fought her battles, and forged an identity built on courage. Mark's posture shifted, his bravado faltering in the face of her unshakable conviction. And in that moment, Maria summoned all her resolve, all her strength. She would reclaim her narrative and free Alex. "Go, now," she shouted again, pushing Alex toward the exit. Alex, who had been momentarily frozen, found himself stirred by Maria's courage. Her strength ignited a realization in him. He would no longer remain a victim of circumstance. The boy she had known was gone. Now he stood alongside her as an emerging force. With a powerful surge from within, Maria led the way down the exit route, her heart racing with both fear and anticipation. Behind them, she could still hear Mark yelling, but she no longer focused on him. She had crossed the threshold into a new realm of possibility. Just as they cleared the door leading outside, a group of security guards spotted them and began to close in. But Maria didn't hesitate. "This way," she urged Alex, her voice unwavering. They sprinted into the moonlit night, the cold air rushing around them, filled with the fresh scent of freedom, as the mansion grew further behind. Beyond the confines of marble and despair lay potential. The life Maria had always dreamed of was finally within reach. As they dashed away from the shadows, Maria felt an exhilarating sense of empowerment. Not only had she fought for Alex's life, but she had finally conquered the greatest foe, her own silence. She faced the world anew, bold and fierce, with the echoes of her courage ringing clear in her mind. In the days that followed, Maria would reclaim ownership of her choices, embracing opportunities that had previously felt out of reach. No longer confined to the shadows, she realized just how capable she was. Every challenge ahead would be met with strength and integrity. She had proven that change was impossible until it was made real. The mansion was no longer a gilded cage. It had transformed into a catalyst for personal growth. In the aftermath of the confrontation, whispers of the past could not drown out her newfound voice. The earnest realization that she could effect change, not just for herself, but for others who might still languish under the oppressive weight of silence. As the chapters of her life unfolded, Maria transformed into an embodiment of bravery, claiming her rightful place in the world. The journey had irrevocably shaped her identity, proving that sometimes, to achieve true liberation, one must first shatter the barriers imposed by others and themselves. This was her moment. Her pledge of defiance, transformation, and ultimate self-actualization had been forged in the crucible of experience. And as her future stretched before her like an open road, she stepped forward, resolute, ready to seize every moment with unrelenting courage. Now, you need to take action to support the channel created for stories of overcoming trials. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional narratives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help spread these powerful tales. Comment below with your reactions, thoughts, and theories about Maria's incredible journey. And for the love of powerful storytelling, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who truly need to witness this transformative conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.